Excellent. So we have 45 minutes to talk about all things entrepreneurship, and we've got some amazing panelists that are at different stages of their journey in entrepreneurship, and I think we're going to learn a lot from the panelists. And if anybody has any questions, then please do ask them in the chat, and I'll facilitate. So and no question is too stupid or too difficult. So really do challenge them. So maybe just to begin, tell you about my journey. So I started UCL in 1999, actually doing computer science with cognitive science. It was AI before it was called AI, and did my master's, my PhD, several postdocs from UCL. One of the things I heard recently, I'm sure that many people will know Philip Treleaven. I heard, not directly, but somebody quoted him. He said, if when doing a PhD at UCL, you only get a PhD, you would have failed. And the reason why I did a PhD is because I wanted to do other things in parallel. I wanted to write a book and start a business, and I managed to do that. And I'm sure that might resonate with some of the panelists as well. Over the past 10 years, I've helped spin outs from UCL. I've ran an applied AI master's program in the department. I'm now entrepreneur in residence, so I help the people on this call and others understand how to create companies from their amazing research and ideas. So anyway, what we'll do is we'll kick things off, and I'll ask each panelist just to go around, introduce themselves, the journey that they've been on, how they've got here. It would be really useful, and then we're going to start to get into the nitty-gritty details about what the challenges are and what advice they would give people that are also going on this journey. So maybe Ed, we'll start with you if that's all right.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, just to second that, Daniel, I'd much rather answer questions than rabbit on. I think that's kind of a really great thing. So I guess I don't even know where to begin. I was always interested in AI, interested in maths and ideas of like physical ways, it's like kind of proper like mathematical descriptions of how brains could work, and studied math, studied AI, worked in finance for a couple of years, did my PhD at UCL with David Barber, and then did a postdoc, and was always more drawn to machine learning solving kind of real problems, right? That was where I'm kind of most excited. And I'm also excited by problems where I guess they're kind of more multifaceted than just kind of the technical feasibility, but more around like how the thing is used and embedded. And I think that's like a natural draw into starting a business. And I guess kind of the big steps along the way were deciding to doing it in those like first years, which are quite difficult with money and everything. And then getting your first customers, getting your first investors, and just from there, really. I mean, I think hiring your first kind of teammates, those are the huge, the huge moments I think of on the journey, I guess.
Cool. Jacob?
Hi. So actually I started at, I went to UCL and did stats in '98, so around the same time as you, Daniel. And then I was always interested in the financial markets since I was a kid, actually. Then I went into equity trading, into actuarial, because I wanted to do a lot more kind of statsy type stuff. And it's not all equity trading was at that time as quantitative as I wanted it to be. But the journey that led to entrepreneurship probably really began around 2006. I went part-time at PwC, just lots of research into prediction for the financial markets and that kind of thing. That led me inevitably into machine learning, because it's mankind's most advanced methods for getting info out of data. And then I joined David's CSML program at the Computer Science Center, the first one actually that he created. As soon as I saw it, I dropped the CFA and dropped actuary. I was like, that's where I want to be. Did the masters, then I did a PhD. Well, I got the PhD scholarship, but dropped out to form a company doing machine learning research, again into the financial markets, because I knew exactly what I wanted to look at and didn't kind of to necessarily write about it as such. And then went to we got some funding and stuff, but we rejected it and joined an insurer to go kind of in-house into a company, because I realized at that time that we kind of really lacked data. And this is one of the problems actually for doing startups. that I was just talking to David about earlier is access to good data. It can be difficult, certainly in the financial markets it is. So set up a data science team at an insurer, and I was excited also at looking at other problems because I knew there were lots there. And we solved using evolutionary computing, which I spoke to you about, Daniel, at the first CogX, using evolutionary computing to solve the balance sheet. That was quite crazy because we saw a laptop in 45 minutes unlock 200 million capital, 750 million in cash, and that kind of thing. Go, wow, these are like big numbers. Then from there, most of the team, people I brought in were hedge fund people or machine learning people. We focused really on like big data for equities, got heavily into GPU computing, which the insurer didn't use at the time. It was new to me as well, actually, at the time. And then we got a spin-out offer from the insurer, but we left and rejected that to form 3AI around DEC 2018. Spent a further 2 years doing more research. My journey's been a very long and painful one of lots of R&D and basically trying to rebuild and reinvent it all from first principles. But we've now seen our AI, which covers all the world stocks, significantly outperform human experts. So we're quite excited about the future for what it holds. Nevertheless, it's a very difficult story to tell and very difficult. It's surprisingly difficult to explain to industry. Another challenge for entrepreneurship, the value actually in what you're doing and how it kind of fits and that kind of thing. So that's the journey so far.
Yeah. You said it's hard, but it only gets harder. I keep reminding people that. So sorry if you don't want to hear that. Andrew.
Hi. So I'm Andrew from Scrub AI. I kind of did the machine learning masters at UCL back in 2016, and like with the idea to doing a startup off the back of it, because I kind of realized that, I mean, we all know there's a lot of opportunity in this space, so that's kind of why I got into it. And then I was a machine learning consultant for a few years. Yeah, like, and that was really useful because I got to see like the practical applications of machine learning, like, and get paid for it, obviously, which was nice. And then, so I've kind of always been looking for startup ideas. And the first one I looked at was this kind of gym, sort of like having CCTV cameras in gyms kind of track your workouts, because obviously there's a really pain point of putting your workout into these apps, like as boring and manual. But yeah, ultimately we didn't pursue that just because it wasn't really the right problem for me. But I hope someone does it eventually. And then my friend Nicola came to me, who's working in insurance. She came to me with this problem that she has where she has to get these spreadsheets from all her clients into the same like structured format to put into like a modeling software. And so basically it's just like a really manual data cleansing process. So, and it really resonated with me because as a data scientist, you spend 80% of your time cleansing data anyway. So it made a lot of sense to like try and automate that process with machine learning. And yeah, that's what we kind of set out to do at Scrub AI. So yeah, we quit our jobs about 2 years ago and co-founded that. And yeah, now we're 5 people. We've done a funding round, and yeah, we're working with 2 insurance companies to kind of like build the initial product. So yeah, that's where we're at today.
Excellent. Gabriel, where are you at in your journey?
I think in a very different place. So I guess my path, I'll start at UCL. I joined UCL as a member of staff around 2009, and you could say that it was a nice, idyllic sort of academic life for a long time, where because of the nature of the subject, I was excited and interested in it, and there was no entrepreneurial or commercial vibe to it. A lot of the things we were doing were not commercializable, not necessarily exploitable in that way, and that was fine. The interest was intrinsic. But over time, I guess that's now over more than 10 years, I could see the population of where the alumni went. So people, master's and PhD students from my group, were less going out into either academic, well, the academic stream is about the same size as it was, but the other students who weren't going into academia, weren't staying in academia, were less going in as employees of a company where maybe they weren't even working on vision, but were increasingly going into situations where they were sort of CTOs or involved in startups. And then I guess critically, a sort of combination of things happened. One was that around 2016, we started developing an algorithm among many papers that we published, but we developed an algorithm for depth prediction, which was, I think, quite commercially exploitable, compared to some of the other things that we'd done, which were interesting and exploitable, but maybe not for a large number of people. And at the same time, two people from my group raised their hands and said, well, if you're having entrepreneurial thoughts, talk to us, because we're on the verge of leaving here. They were postdocs. We're on the verge of leaving UCL and joining a tech giant. But if there was, if the conditions were right, we could be more entrepreneurial. And so that was the right confluence of things, and Matrix Mill was formed. So as a UCL spinout, which was then acquired in 2018 by Niantic, and that's the makers of Pokemon Go and other things. And so that team, the Matrix Mill team, became the R&D arm of Niantic, and that team has grown, and I look after that team part-time, and that was the seed of Niantic London, now at Leicester Square.
Amazing. That's quite a journey. Iasonas. What while you're answering the question, maybe everybody can think about what piece of advice would you have given to yourself when you were first starting out this journey, if you could go back in time. But maybe think about that question while Iasonas answers his.
Hey, I'm Iasonas. I have a similar track record with Gabe. So I started as a pure researcher, doing my publishing business and my research with just intrinsic interest. And for this started in 2001, and until 2016, I had no interest and no ties with industry whatsoever. And actually, 2016 is the year where I joined UCL too, but at the same time, I was also joining Facebook AI research. And this was because back then it was apparently getting some of the best people in AI and doing basic research within industry. So there I was a bit more like driven by, the research problems rather than the industrial side of things. During those 2 years, I started getting more and more interested in what applications can come out of my research. So in 2018, I quit Facebook and I formed a startup called Real AI. So this was together with a colleague who equally well left his job in Google to do it, and a professor at Imperial College, and also my best PhD student who was at the time finishing his PhD. So there we did something quite a bit of the beaten track, in the sense that we did only development and research. So we did not have clients, or did not go after clients or investors for that matter. So we said, let's do what we know best, which was build new technology, but steer it in a particular use case, which is body mesh reconstruction on mobile phones. And we know that there are big companies who want to have access to this technology. So we were laser focused on the technology itself. So it's a bit uncommon, I think, with the standard path of a startup. And it's also, I think, related to what Gabe was doing in Matrix Mill, but was developing core technology as well. And in last September, a year ago, we were acquired by Snap. So now I'm a research manager in the London office of Snap, leading the same team, where we are developing more technology around augmented reality that involves human-related use cases and human body reconstruction in real time on the phone.
Very cool.
This is.
I think that one theme that's come out here, quite a few of you have used the word research and technology and then the commerciality of it. And I think for me, there's a big difference between a science technology and a business, and sometimes we underestimate that when we're starting out. Fortunately, we're in the world of AI, so if we do develop a technology, it's probably going to be useful somewhere. But very often people don't appreciate the big leaps between research, technology, and business. So with that, what advice would you give your younger self if you could go back in time, Ed?
Yeah, I do think, I think you've hit upon it quite strongly, which is the difference between something being useful and something being something you want to buy, I guess that as being the kind of the heart of a business is having a product or service that people want to buy. And I feel, and also as a founder, often you have to sell your shares, right? So you have to sell bits of your company for cash. So I feel like one of the things is kind of this notion of momentum. I think that was something I wish someone had taught me, kind of a bit more kind of conceptual momentum. So, most seed investors won't invest unless there's a good angel investor. There are these signals, and most customers are looking for another customer, and to have taken the leap. And so, when you're a technologist and you care about what something can do, that kind of more narrative, story-based view of value, which is fictional, is actually fictional, doesn't actually mean the product works or it doesn't work, is often much more important, right, than any kind of utility that you may or may not have developed. And I think that some technologists understand this really well. If you look at Elon Musk, he's like the master of telling an incredible story and getting attention for that. And he seems, I don't know anything about it really, other than what you hear is he's a technologist at heart, right? But he understands the power of that, and anyone who builds a business understands the power of that perception kind of, and how these things are communicated. And I think those things don't come so naturally to maybe an academic researcher, right? And I think, often I'd be kind of frustrated by the questions that a customer or a prospect would ask. It's well, surely you just want to test the technology. Why don't you just test it and see if it works?
Do you think that the narrative can be taught, or do you think you just have to go through the process?
I think you need to be thinking about your plan within the framework of a narrative, right? Your first customers should be customers you can tell a great story with. Either that's there's a killer brand, or there's a killer need, or there's something that speaks to the future. It's everything is the narrative. And I think the narrative is almost more important than, obviously you wouldn't be doing it unless there's a kernel of something you believe in and that can solve it. And I think so. It's just I feel like messaging, and never-ending messaging. It's so important, and I think that all successful businesses tap into some sort of zeitgeist idea or some sort of message which can easily propagate through a fluid of human brains. If you have some dynamical system where every particle is a brain, you need an idea that could just propagate through that mass and not have something that's complex or hard to grasp, or and it depends who you're selling. Maybe if you're selling very deep tech to very sophisticated buyers, right? But in the main, I feel it's less messaging and momentum. Yeah,
makes sense. Jacob, would you agree? What advice would you give your younger self?
I think it's interesting what you said before about thinking things in the kind of research, tech, and business, because things do start with research that then become a tech usable product that then can become a business, but research can't really become a business until it becomes a kind of product. And I think it's probably it would be really valuable at the beginning to sit down and be really honest with oneself about what one wants to do. As opposed to advice on actually doing the business and that kind of thing. There's a lot of that out there and people can read it and buy it and stuff, but it's a really different lifestyle. I've gone through that path from research to tech to business. In a way, I never really thought I wanted to build a business. I just wanted to solve problems. And the building the business part is a whole load of other problems that you probably weren't focused on at the point of research and tech. When you're going to the business part, you really need to be conscious of your own kind of skill and interest gaps and search out good people that are really passionate about the things you're not passionate in, and really good at challenging you. And they will disrupt kind of creative, innovative founders. Are gonna you have to kind of like put your ego, you have to kind of smash it. The ego really is the enemy, and you have to let go a bit of your baby if you want it to become a business. If you want it to be research, you can own it forever. If you want it to be tech, well, what's the point if you don't share it with people? And then once it's a business, it really is a whole different thing. So I think they're just very different lifestyles as well. So I think because life is so short, I would say reverse engineer. What kind of lifestyle do you want, and what's really going to make you happy? And then maybe go for that. And it might be traversing through all of them. You might, sometimes you need to convert the research to keep the funding machine going, because that you can keep researching further in what we're trying to do. Building the business really enables, hopefully, to get a much bigger resource pool to keep priming the research. So it's kind of so sometimes there's a kind of loop there. But
yeah, that makes sense. It's maybe there's a tie in there with what I'd said about the narrative, and maybe starting out with the end point and then working backwards, as opposed to starting out with the science. Yeah, Andrew, what piece of advice would you give yourself?
Well, I'd probably, for me, definitely learn Git a lot better, because it's handy.
Does anybody even know Git?
I'm definitely a lot better at it than I was. But yeah, and also I think what we did really well at the beginning was just like talk to users a lot and just get the constant feedback on the products. So you're never because often I'll go down rabbit holes where I'm enjoying the research side of things, but actually it might not be useful to the end user. So just keeping that feedback loop constant, I think, is something we did really well.
I think that's just, I'm sure you've got more to add there, but just to echo that, and people often think, I'll tell people my idea and they'll run with it. Most clever people I know already have their own, and then sitting around waiting to steal people's ideas. My advice to everybody would be to talk to as many people as possible and create that feedback loop. Sorry, Andrew, I didn't mean to interrupt.
I think that, and then I guess just raise money sooner, I probably would have said, because that's also just something that makes everything a lot easier, and also gives you more deadlines to work to, and a bit of pressure is always good.
Well, so some people might disagree. I never raised funding in Satalia. Fortunately, I was doing my PhD and things like that in parallel, so that was my funding source. But I guess it depends on your business whether you do need to raise funding early on, because raising funding can bring problems. But the people I know that needed to get their product out to market very, very quickly, they often say, I should have raised money earlier.
Yeah.
Cool. Gabriel?
Yeah, thanks. I think Jacob mentioned a number of points that I quite liked. So I'm sorry, I don't have a single thing. In fact, I'll be contentious maybe. I would say it worked out, and there are many paths to success. And I think that in some cases, had we known more about what it takes for a business to succeed, we might not have done it. We might have said, wow, well, we're not doing it the right way. We're not going on the right path. That's not what other people have done. I'm not talking about the technology. I'm talking about the entrepreneurial side of it. And then it wouldn't have worked out for us. So I'm not saying make mistakes. That's the path to happiness. I'm saying there are many distinct formulas for success. As an example, we did not think very hard about end customers. We thought about our technology for use by other businesses. And so we broadly said, our technology is cool. We're making it more robust compared to the version we published in the paper. And everyone's going to want this. And so now in retrospect, lots of businesses who might be good customers for such technology, they have their own tech stacks. And that's a real obstacle. So we looked at the automotive industry, for example, and so we eventually realized, the automotive industry is not lining up to ask us to throw money at us, because they have this whole tech stack with all kinds of other sensors, and then we have to inject ourselves into that. Had we known that, we might have not started in the first place. So there was a bit of ignorance is bliss. Let's go for it. And because of that, a completely different sector, the augmented reality sector, spotted us and came out of the woodwork and said, well, but we are very interested, and we said, oh, how interested is interest, and then those conversations can happen. So I guess the message to my younger self is there are multiple paths to success, and focus on the things you're really, really good at. Because as Jacob mentioned, you can hopefully find people who are passionate about the stuff you're not good at. And they are out there. There are the equivalents to, the person who gets 3 papers at that conference every year, right? But they work in marketing, or they work in customer relations, and you can meet them and you realize, oh my gosh, they are the Turing Prize winners from that field, and boy, now my business is worth twice as much because we've added them in addition to the great technology we were incubating.
Gabriel, you use the word success a lot, and the next question before Iasonas answers his is, and I'd like to think about trying to answer this in a single sentence, but what does success look like to you all in 5 years' time? But before we answer that question, Iasonas, what piece of advice would you give your younger self?
Very similar to Gabe. There was, when we started the company, there were all kinds of people from entrepreneurial background who were in a way telling us what they were expecting, let's say a scalable business that can be on the cloud and SaaS and clients and all those things that are, the vanilla version of what they would expect to hear. All of this was entirely irrelevant and was a waste of time. We put happily just a fraction of time on that. And it was relevant because it was, they were using their prior, taking a sample from that, saying, why don't you do that? And practically the one thing where things could have gone very wrong, but I was lucky because I had good co-founders who were much more experienced from working on product groups, was that as a researcher, you smell a bit of smell all the flowers, try to have all of the bits of your story that you think would be the best story to tell. The only thing that mattered in the end was how far we would move the product of the acquirer forward in how much time. So it's like how ready was what the solution we had. So I think the storytelling was just a bit of it. They knew what they wanted. And what mattered was how good was our solution. So it was the case that you were describing before. I don't know if it was you, or if, I don't remember who was saying, but it was like a very savvy person on the other side, knowing exactly what they wanted and not needing to hear the story. So in that sense, all of the recipes that you're given about, what's the way of convincing the other side about your value in terms of your client and your revenue were irrelevant. The only thing that matters in that sense is how ready is your tech to be used in production.
Yeah, nice. Ed, 5 years' time, what does success look like in a sentence?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I just want it to. I want this thing that we're building to be more ubiquitous. I think there's a completely new mode of kind of technology which is opening up, which is people teaching machines, right, how to do things. And I think we're really at that kind of interface, and it's a very multifaceted kind of complex thing. And I don't know if we're attacking it the right way. Loads of different people are attacking it different ways. And I think to have attacked it in the right way and for it to be ubiquitous would be a big kind of thing for me.
So you want to do what you're doing, but bigger. That makes sense. Jacob?
Hi. I think what we need to be successful, firstly, is that the investment industry recognize what we now know in through AI, which is that artificial intelligence can learn the job of deeply analyzing and understanding companies and predicting them with a kind of like a superhuman level of accuracy. So we're coming back for a seminar in Feb here at UCL, and we're now recording in advance of that our AI's predictions on the blockchain, because that's a really good source for external validation and timestamping, which is obviously critical in as well, because everyone can say, oh yeah, look what we said ages ago, and actually just make that up. So, but what we're seeing with the AI is about 60 times as much explanation in the variation of stock returns explained by the AI versus 18,000 investment professionals. That has huge implications for the industry, and we believe that this century's Warren Buffett will be use AI because you can't. No human can be an empirical expert in equities. Too much data. So I think for us, it would be actually that our objective is to actually land as the company that's recognised for being the first one to. Don't say you can ever solve it in financial markets, but to achieve superhuman AI level in equity AI, that would be success. So we're trying to do if you like, an IBM AlphaGo type of challenge there with the AI. If that lands, then the rest is history. So that's the challenge that we're putting ourselves. Let's see how we do.
Yeah. Andrew?
Yeah, so in 5 years' time, I think potentially we have an exit or not, but I think mainly we want to just be at the forefront of like kind of the niche field we're in, which is like data cleansing. As I see it as like a core component of like the machine learning workflow and producing good research. And yeah, just building a good company with a good culture where people enjoy working, I think.
Yeah, nice. Gabriel?
Two versions. One is that my entrepreneurial appetite is sated by my work at Niantic, and that the team there continues to sort of flourish the way it's been going, largely UCL powered, I might add. So that's probably no accident. Or a different variant is if that does sort of become samey for me somehow, that one of the other groups or generations of students working in the UCL team, particularly in computer vision for me, might lead to the next startup, and we start over, and that is in itself exciting. But also, I would say this time I would go, rather than be business to business, I'd rather probably go for technology that goes business to end user. So those are, I think, the two scenarios.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. It's a trend that I see often with entrepreneurs that have done a B2B that want to go and do a B2C. It's scalable. Yeah, I wanted to say that, Jacob, it's very polite of you to put your hand up.
Sorry, yeah. Actually, that resonated with us as well. Actually, I was meant to mention that whilst we're initially targeting B2B, we've got quite an exciting journey ahead plan that we vision, which is to take our AI, what it is now essentially a brain expert, through to being an avatar with all the technology that's now available for creating kind of interactive human-like creatures that you can talk to. And with the advancement in NLP and language and all that kind of stuff, we want to create the AI to be, and in 5 years, it'd be a good time to do it, a full-on avatar that knows hundreds of thousands of years of stock data and is able to kind of open their palm and reveal to you patterns from hundreds of thousands of years of stock data and big data insights and that kind of thing. So it could become an educational tool as well for the future. And I really believe, based on what we saw actually in the insurance company, is that experts started to learn from AI, which then got us to improve the AI to ask better questions. There's a kind of human machine hyperloop learning process that's possible in expert fields with AI actually. And I think that's a really exciting space in AI, but not yet recognized in wider journalism and media yet.
Sure. I think it's something that Ed picked up as well. I agree. Iasonas, what does success look like to you in 5 years?
Yeah, so I'm working in augmented reality, which is like one of the most open-ended and exciting areas. So I would really want to say what I've been doing in research being used by hundreds of millions of customers. And now we're doing humans. Eventually would like to do everything. So that's, the same way you can be ambitious research-wise, you can also be ambitious in terms of what your product is. So if we manage to bring computer vision on everyone's devices, this would be, I will be feeling fulfilled.
Yeah, interestingly, none of you have spoken about commercial success. You haven't said you want to make millions and invest. It's actually about having an impact from your technology, which is really interesting. Very good. Okay, we've got a question from the audience. You don't all have to answer this, but pick it up if you're interested. So, to what extent did ethical considerations feature in your commercial aspirations? I guess for me, it probably didn't early on, but as I've developed as an entrepreneur, I think much more deeply about impact and purpose and ethical considerations. But anybody else think deeply about this stuff? Yeah, Jacob.
I was going to say, yeah, I don't think that I consciously think about ethics, but there is an internal thing in me that is very ethical, because I pulled out of a company that I didn't ethically agree with and gave them my shares back for nothing. And that company made a lot of money, and I knew it would make a lot of money. But so with the company that we're doing now, with 3AI, it's actually highly ethical. AI, when well delivered, to solve problems that can be applied for all of the humanity, where even things like investing or into medicine and that kind of thing will grossly bring down the cost of professional expertise, because actually the AI will empower the expertise and can be in many places at many times, like for example a doctor on a phone, which is like a what they call it, a Project X challenge or something. So generally speaking, the ethics, I think, ethical considerations is really about humans, and we need to look in the mirror. How do we use technology? But technology well used has very positive impacts for humans. It's how we use it is really the ethical side. But the other thing also is there's a lot of industries, like for example in investment management, like 95% of investors, or sorry, 91% underperform the indices over like a 15-year period. So there's a lot of people who earn money but don't add value compared to throwing darts at a board. I don't know many professions like that where guessing is about as good or slightly better than a professional. But it does beg the question of why we have professionals operating in that capacity. And I think the same is true in politics. And in politics, we don't really know how to evaluate government. Go back to Satalia and what you guys did with the evolutionary computing. And we spoke about this some time back, I believe. So I spoke to Demis about this. Evolutionary computing and genetic algorithms are surely the only way that we can optimize a national budget, where we look at all the different cost breakdowns but we need, and it also, if used well with like evolutionary computing, we're able to bring back in the expertise of all the different people by measuring and making accountable the value of a river, children's mental health, but also GDP and also on employment and all those things. The road to utopia requires work and blood and sweat. We're never going to have the democracy we want. We're never going to have the utopia we want if we don't work for it, but it's possible. We can create anything.
Cool. Anybody else want to pick up the ethics question? We've got one more question coming from the audience. Strong view, but I have a very controversial view about AI ethics, which is I don't think there is such thing as AI ethics, but that's probably a different talk. Go on, Ed.
I mean, the biggest thing I think the birds is like, I mean, just, yeah, the big things like global warming. I mean, are we all just dancing around whilst this huge thing is coming to get us all, destroy our world? I mean, that's just, yeah, anything where if you're not contributing to that problem, it's like, it's kind of,
Yeah.
That's
We've got lots of problems to solve. We've got lots of actually my personal belief is that I don't think these solutions are going to come from Silicon Valley or from governments, but it's going to come from entrepreneurs. It's going to come from us.
Exactly. Yeah. If we were focused on it, yeah.
Yeah, and I think this is a bigger push now towards having both a profit focus and a purpose focus. And I think the companies that are going to survive are the ones that have an incredibly strong purpose. So my feeling is that you are the ones that are going to solve some of the big problems that we're going to be facing over the years. Okay, so what advice can you give or share on solving the cold start problem, given that the more promising techniques in ML often require large amounts of data? Anyway, based on my personal experience, and I think this echoes some of the things that Ed has said, which is typically entrepreneurs sell first before they actually have the thing, and you don't always necessarily have to get your first customer by having something that works. But anybody that managed to solve the cold start problem?
That was a selling point for. Oh, I'm sorry, Jacob. You raised your hand. You go first.
You go, Gabriel.
Okay, if you're sure, thank you. I'll be quick. For us, that was a major selling point, that video is easy to get. So yes, it requires, we didn't solve the problem, we still needed data, but video data is easy-ish to get. And the technology we developed was explicitly around doing self-supervision, so that we didn't have to either pay or try to engineer the labels. And the labels in our case would have been very, very expensive, or even impossible to get for outdoor scenes.
Nice. Anybody else?
I was just going to say, yeah, we actually went back into employment to solve that problem, because the data in the financial world and all the other data sets I wanted to get, it was very hard to get a trial as an individual small company researcher. But once in an insurer, it was very easy to get trials on data, and trials usually give you the full history, which is what we really wanted to look at. But also had to then write business cases internally of how that could be useful to that company and build things related to that kind of thing. So it's been quite a long journey of solving that. But getting investment would make that all a bit easier. But then you've got that catch-22, haven't you? You're raising because there's a promise that you could discover something in the data. So
yeah, there's also options to form partnerships with customers where they can give you the data, you can build the models, and they benefit from, you know, having a reduced commercial model or whatever. And I often say to people that you're going to get your first customers from your friends and your network. It's very unlikely you're going to from, again, cold start, go to anybody and say we've got a solution, do you want to buy it? Most first clients come from friends. So my advice is, again, go out there and make friends with as many people as possible, and perhaps do a deal initially early on to solve their problem where they benefit and you benefit by having access to the data, and you'll have a case study as well. I think we've only got a few minutes left. Does anybody else want to make a comment or anything about again, people maybe starting out on that journey? Any pearls of wisdom that you want to share? Would you all do it again if you knew how difficult it was and the challenges? Go on, Gabriel.
I would do it again, maybe to my wife's chagrin. But I would say sorry, I had a nicer way of saying that. The opportunity to do this, it really depends on your context. And we are used to this domain, like in this sector, this gathering. We're used to single author PhD thesis. We're used to papers where you have 3 or 4 authors, right? So I think it really helps to think of this as, what would I do if I had £1 million? What would I do if I had 10 million pounds? And the easier it is for you to answer those questions, the better you'll be long term. If all you really need is £1,000, then just do it. But it's probably not necessarily a big business that you're trying to build. It's probably a specific itch that you're trying to scratch.
That makes sense. Okay, we've run out of time. Thank you, everybody. I'm sure that all the participants would be very keen to reach out to you and ask questions, and I'm sure you'll all be open to engage with them. So thank you very much, everybody. Have a great day and hopefully success with your businesses.
Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Daniel.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening.
Bye-bye.